Okay, this is an informative speech for my public speaking class, and this is going to be about the life of Sally Hemings. So, to give an introduction, Sally Hemings was a biracial woman. She was enslaved to Thomas Jefferson, and she was known as his concubine. That's basically what she's known for. If you hear her name, that's that's the association. She was born in 1773 in Charles City, Virginia, and she died in Charlottesville in 1835 at the age of 62. So she lived a decently long life for the most part, especially for that time frame. Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson aren't they did not just start to be linked just because she was a slave. She was inherited to Thomas Jefferson by John Wells, which is Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law, which is also Thomas Jefferson's wife's father. So that made Sally Hemings and Martha half sisters. So they had the same father but not the same mother. So that was the link between them also. So it started as that, and then Sally was inherited to Jefferson by John Wells. So Sally Hemings bore 6 of Jefferson's children, but only 4 of them lived to adulthood. So one of the main events or main things that happened between Jefferson and Sally Hemings was their time they spent in Paris. So as you know, Thomas Jefferson was the president. He was a high political person at the time, and he was just doing a lot of conventions, a lot of speeches, just doing a lot of things. So he took her to Paris with him. At the time, she was only 14 years old, and he was 44. So just keep that in mind for future reference. So they spent approximately 2 years there, like 26 months in total, I believe. And during their time frame there, she was a free woman and a paid servant because slavery was illegal in France. So, not saying she was living the life, but it was a lot better than being in Virginia, per se. For unknown reasons, Jefferson and Sally Hemings started to have a sexual relationship. Um, she went there when she was 14, so we don't know the exact time frame when it started or how it begun, but we just know it happened because she had 6 of his children. So, the details are a little bit conscrewed, but there is hard DNA evidence that she did have 6 of his kids. So, when it was time to come back to Virginia to go to Monticello, and Monticello is like 30 minutes from my house. I've been there. It's beautiful. So I've been there and I know the history of the home. But when they were going to come back to Monticello in Virginia, she was going to be a slave again. And in her mind, she was like, I'm learning French here. I'm getting an education. I'm good where I'm at. And she did not want to come back. So she convinced Jefferson that if she came back to Virginia as a slave, he had to free all of her children, all of their children, by the time they turned age 21. So she was fine with being a slave, staying a slave her entire life, but she wanted to make sure her children were going to be straight by the time they turned 21. And she didn't just leave herself out to dry. She did request for special privileges for herself once they got back home in Monticello. So Jefferson wanting her to come back and not wanting her to stay, he agreed to the terms, and that's the conclusion they came to. So, they returned back to Monticello. They had their kids, and she basically lived out the life there. Once her kids turned 21, they went and pursued their endeavors. So 3 out of the 4 surviving children, so there are 4 of them, so Beverly, Harriet, Eston, and Madison. So 3 of them, which were Beverly, Harriet, and Eston, they lived their lives as white adults up north. So once they turned 21, they decided they did not want to keep Hemings' heritage, and they wanted to just stay white. Because Sally Hemings was biracial, and she was really light-skinned, and Thomas Jefferson was white, so they came out really light, so they could pass as white, so they did. The only one that didn't was Madison. He decided to stick to his roots and, just claim his heritage from Sally Hemings, which kudos to him, applaud him. So over the years, Madison tried to stay in contact with his siblings, but eventually they just stopped replying to his letters. So, I mean, what more can he do if they're not, trying to communicate back with him? Um, Madison, he did publicly claim in 1873 in his memoir that Thomas Jefferson was his father. It did create a little bit of speculation, but it wasn't much that folks could say because at the time DNA wasn't really a thing. Jefferson was gone, so it's kind of just like, mm, you know, um, Madison and Eston, they did marry free women of color in Charlottesville. However, Eston changed his surname to Jefferson and he lived in the white community. So after a while, he just decided to claim to be white and not biracial. Which, thinking about it now, I guess that I'm not going to say I guess. It did help them because they didn't have the challenges of being African American or even mulatto, as the term used to be. So, claiming themselves as white, they didn't have to worry about things that black individuals did at that time. Madison was the only one that continued to identify as being black, like I said. All of her children had respected careers despite their parted ways. So, the main thing to take away from this is it may not seem like Sally Hemings did much, but she worked hard for her children just so they could be secure when they got older. So I feel as though she did what she could in the maximum way possible. Maybe she didn't live the best life possible, but she made sure her children would have that life that she never had. I highly doubt being a slave is easy, especially when the president of the United States. But look how she came out. She made sure her kids were straight, and she just made sure everything was fine. Don't just think of her as a mistress to the president, but that of her own personal life story.